from movies to TV shows to anime to manga to the stories that people tell you. I feel like because my brain has kind of always worked this way, there's always a framework and a structure to the way things work.
Hmm.
And I always feel like that structure is kind of like a story. Maybe not necessarily always a beginning, middle, and end, but in a way, you can kind of find that when it comes to like someone's life, even, right? Like
Right.
there's always that flow of motion. Like, of course, a story is a little bit differently structured, like, maybe a book compared to someone's like human life, of course.
Hmm.
Not saying that they're the same thing, but these ideas and these topics and how grand it can be is really something where we can talk about like the story of the world, maybe the story of the universe, maybe the story of something even beyond. And I
Right.
think it's beautiful.
Right. Right. Because like it can, like if we can like build something that connects like universally with anyone, like it's very optimistic and very probably going to be extremely challenging to even reach that. But I think we can uh, we're aligning right now in a sense. Like we both agree with how important storytelling is to a human in general, like to their survival and who they are as people, right? And it's like, where do we
Mhm.
go from here, right? Where do we go? And I'm so excited. I'm just, it's awesome hearing from a writer. I'm just curious on like what's your like process on writing stories?
So mostly I'm still in the developing of like my actual solidified process, since I'm still at the beginning of my quote unquote professional journey.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, it's kind of like a progression. When I was younger, stories were easily able to come up in my mind. Like I was able to talk and think of something at the same time in a
Mm-hmm.
way that somehow managed to become coherent. But
Mm-hmm.
I think as I focus on the craft more, that ability, as like fun as it can sound, started to dissipate and was replaced by one of very much like more methodical thinking. Like storytellers have these different ideas on why they can, or like their strengths on writing a story, just like any skill, right?
Yeah.
Like there's some authors that very much like characters. There's some authors that very much like the dynamics or other things like that. For
Mm-hmm.
me, I think that one of the biggest things and one of the things that struck out to me when it comes to stories are themes, right?
Yeah.
And so I always think about an idea or a theme or something that I'm thinking first. And from there, I try to, or I create a narrative behind that,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes it might be an idea that I have, and I might try to find the themes in the idea that I'm speaking about. And
Mm-hmm.
from there, I sit down and write, and I just like envision it in my mind. And then when I actually start to write it down, I outline and stuff like that.
Okay.
So it
Yeah.
goes from there, and whatever. Yeah.
For sure. For sure. That's awesome, man. Do you have like
Mhm.
a story like that you are most proud of that you've ever written?
Um, it's kind of hard because I'm proud of it, but I also haven't necessarily like quote unquote finished it yet.
Oh,
So
okay.
how I started into it was when I was younger, my little brothers, they our parents didn't really read us bedtime stories. And
Mm-hmm.
so the reason why I got into writing is because like it started off by me like, telling bedtime stories to my little brothers,
Oh,
right? Before we went to bed.
that's
And
great.
from there it kind of blossomed, and so there's a story that I have that's kind of that was a fan fiction. I don't know how much you are into like anime, but
I've watched some. Yeah.
there's an anime called One Piece. It's like a pirate story.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's an anime called Gurren Lagann, which is like a mech story. And these both have themes that I really liked, and I combined it together to create some sort of entire, like it's a really really long, in depth, whatever it may be. But I'm really proud of it just because it was one of the first times where I could really see a world that was created. While it was something that like I was also piggybacking off of, I could just tell with the way that I was writing it, and also the emotions from my brothers and eventually my friends that I showed it to, that they were really invested in it. And I was like, oh wow, like this is something that I can actually like do.
That's great. Yeah. I've.
And
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, you're fine. You can continue.
Well, I just was gonna say to add like to I've heard that like good writers when they like create like the world and like the themes and the story like elements like where it goes,
Mhm.
like they kind of discover the characters as they're writing it. Like it just like the story just kind of takes over in a sense. Like has that ever happened to you?
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. That's exactly what happened. See, there was a character that I had who I put a lot of emotion into. So this character was a character who started off as kind of like an asshole, okay?
Mm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
he was very much not a good person compared to a lot of the people that you were seeing in the story. But
Mm-hmm.
yet he was on the side of the good guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he was this bad guy who would like, kill, murder, and like he was just, very much a vile kind of human being in the sense of he didn't really care for his own life. He cared about fighting, he cared about showcasing any stronger. But as time progressed and I was trying to develop the backstory, I remember sitting down and trying to like think about and conjure like because I always knew that this character was going to be sympathetic. But then I was able to create this kind of this backstory, which I think was one of the first times where when I told it to my brothers and my friend that they genuinely went silent, before that point, the character was seen as like, they didn't like him. Like, oh my god, like he's just blah blah blah, like he's trying to like, be like weird and this and that. And after that point, he's become like the most glazed one out of every character I've ever written, to the point where it's like if he's not a perspective in the episode or like the thing that I'm reading, they're like, oh, where's he at? Where's he at? And I feel like it really just his in writing him, it kind of blossomed into its own thing. I realized that I was putting themes about my own personal life, about the lives of people that I've heard about things, and it all culminated in this character, which I feel like is just amazing as a whole.
Right. I think it's interesting, like writing good characters like that, where like you can like like you said, sympathize with them, but like the character becomes sympathetic, but like you understand why they are the way they are. And I think this is like writing good villains is like interesting too, like not just to make like the villain bad just because they're bad, but making some sort of like understanding element to like people like being like, okay, I can kind of see where he's coming from, but still, like like with Breaking Bad, for instance, that's fantastic with Walter White.
Beautiful show.
Just a fantastic show all around. I've watched that like two or three times. It's been a while since I watched it last. Or even with Thanos in Avengers, having a character like that where like you can understand like their motivation, I think creates a compelling character. Like sometimes it's good to have a bad character just to be bad, but like it just kind of takes away from the under like I really find villains that are understanding and where you can be like empathetic in a way to them, more compelling in a sense. But having like a main character
Yeah.
too be like an asshole and like their character arc going from one place to another, I think is important to like showcase to people.
Yeah. And in every with every good villain, they should be kind of not always like they could be a foil to the protagonist, but a foil to the story as a whole. Like I there are villains who are bad to be bad, but you always look at them lesser than the villains that you can kind of understand. Like there's
Right.
just more of a tie, more of a pull. And it was one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about. Remember you were talking about with the guy about like evil,
Mm-hmm.
and what it actually means to be evil. And I heard you say something about how it's you take pause, or like you very restrained on, or you're very restraining on being able to call someone evil.
Mm-hmm.
Calling someone evil is a very emotional, spiritual kind of like accusation, right?
Right. Right.
And and it's interesting to me because the other guy believed that other people are kind of evil. Like there are some people who could be deemed as evil. But in my brain, while I was listening to you guys, I was thinking about various different things, but characters and people in real life and perspective, most importantly, right?
Yeah.
I think that if I were to define evil and what it really means, I would probably say something along the lines of devoid of empathy, right?
Oh. Okay.
In every way, shape, or form, and not just in the way of like. That is not a bad idea. All right. He's saying that comes in. All right. Sorry, this is my little brother. He's coming.
That's okay.
Yeah. So I would say devoid of empathy of almost any kind, because I think that when I see characters who people like to call evil, right? And it's actually, I may change my answer. Devoid of empathy, but also incredibly selfish.
Yes.
Like
I can see that being more the case.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about some of the characters who I find to be some of the most evil or despicable guys, right? In fiction or nonfiction or whatever it may be. And they always have these two traits where it's not, it's like a lack of understanding, a lack of willingness to accept, understand, or care for another's feelings to the
Mm-hmm.
point where it's really just vile in looking at it. And I feel like you can find that trait in almost every evil person that you can like see in any way.
Right.
Like whether it be Hitler, whether it be I forgot what other example you gave,
Jeffrey
Jeffrey
Dahmer.
Dahmer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like it's about their actions being so self-centered, so self like whatever, that they can't even comprehend how their actions may affect another. And that's when I might borderline call it evil.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from there. There's a couple things like I believe like everyone, even though if they don't like admit it themselves, I think everyone believes they're a good person to some extent, right? Like some people might
Mhm.
be like, yeah, I'm not a good person, but I think deep down they're probably like, yeah, I try my best. Um, but so I think there's that element to it. But like another thing I would ask, like if people are selfish or lack empathy, do you think they can learn to be different?
I want to say yeah. Like
Mm-hmm.
unlike a lot of these characters in fiction, I feel like they're the people that are written right. They're kind of methodically built, as well written as they are, right.
Yeah,
So it's kind of hard to see them change. But I think us as human beings, it's kind of change is an inevitability. You can't really dodge it. You can't really move past it. And all your life, you can like try to say that you won't change, but in the action of thinking that you can't change, you are changing. And
yeah,
I think it's very ironic and funny because some people don't think so. Some people think that like someone will be some way all the time. But I think I like to have a little bit more hope than that. I feel like,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Like the reason why I restrain myself from calling people evil and telling people we shouldn't do that is because, like I said, it gives the person more power in a sense. It's like it's such a deeply rooted word, and it can mean different things for other people, right? But I like with my experience, um, people don't understand what happens in my mind when I'm in mania, what acting that way. Like I understand it can be harmful. I'm not trying to harm others or myself, but it comes from a lack of understanding, and it gives me more power, and it takes away from them. Like I said, one person has PTSD because of this now, and I feel terrible about that. And another person, I was just like questioning them way too much about like God. But I was just doing it really curiously, and I wasn't trying to intend to like dismantle them or anything. But she got so scared that she called me evil, and it's like we should be extremely careful because it's like in a sense like a lack of understanding of why a person is acting in such a way. Sometimes, like when it comes to maybe Trump, in a sense, I see people on Reddit calling him evil, but he's just a selfish man. I don't think he's like he's not really doing the best. Like calling like immigrants like the ruining the blood of the country, or like calling them like what was it like uh, the V word, vile or not vile, but you know, demonizing people is not a good thing.
Mhm.
I find a lot of problems with that, but I would go back to saying like he's wrong for doing that and bad for doing that, um, because there's such a deeper rooted word with evil for me and how I come to understand it.
No, yeah, for sure. And I think that's also a big reason why I mentioned perspective too.
Right.
Because like on the one hand you're completely right, like somebody like Trump or somebody like whatever, it's like it gives so much power to the individual, and it also can kind of set someone in a lock, right?
Yeah.
Again, I'm gonna keep tying things back to stories a lot, so
I
my
appreciate
fault.
that. No,
But
no, no. This is great. This is great.
yeah, so there's a common trope of like or even in real life when we see psychologically, like when you constantly tell someone something or when you get someone something and they decide that I might as well just be that thing, you know
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and something as afflicting as being called evil can really transform a person into maybe thinking, okay, you think I'm evil, one person thinks I'm evil, I might as well be, in the same way that one good action can, change the trajectory of someone's life. I guess one action of calling someone bad can change their trajectory.
Right.
But the problem that I have with it sometimes, or the reason why perspective matters, is because, again, it's like, yes, on the one hand, but it's also a privilege in a way. And I think it's a privilege because it's hard it's easy to say someone is not evil when you're not affected directly by actions of what they're doing, in the sense of, like, let's say you go to, like, Germany back in, World War II or whatever it may be,
Right.
like,
Right.
and you're a Jew and you're experiencing the Holocaust and everything and the torment of your people. Of course, me personally, as an optimist sitting from here, I would be like, yeah, I think that as overall part of, like, being human is being able to learn how to navigate through that and being able to, like, come out of that and think. But I imagine that the people experiencing that at the time and going through that at the time and seeing their families tortured, murdered, and whatever it may be, I wouldn't be able to tell that person that Hitler's not evil, you know?
Right. No, yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from, but I think it's like with how I'm thinking and envisioning it, it's like how we treat these people, or how we understand how to progress and try to navigate people's minds to course correct how they are. And I'll bring up Daryl Davis again. Like he didn't have to connect with these like Ku Klux Klan members uh, to deconvert them. He could have just called them evil and just chose not to understand them and chose not to interact with them, but he chose the more courageous path, which was to treat them like a human, and to show, like, be friendly, to connect, and to eventually deconvert them. And they gave him his robes. They gave him their robes. They gave him their robes. And I think that's just like a testament to like how we can operate as humans. Like, obviously when it gets to the point where, like, Germans, like the Nazis, are putting Jews in a concentration camp, like that gets way too far. And I can understand, because like people are already getting violent and offing millions and millions and millions of people. There, that is terrible. And I can understand where you're talking about, where you can't, if you're back in time telling like a Jew that these people aren't evil, then it come across a certain way as like you don't really understand how I'm feeling in a sense. Um, but like this is why I just, yeah, this is why I'm like, they're bad, they're wrong, but be careful with evil. And but even if they're doing like terrible things, it gets pretty complicated. But I understand where you're coming from with your perspective.
Yeah, can you give me, like, maybe like 30 seconds? I'm gonna
Yeah,
go say bye to my dad.
yeah. Go
He's
ahead.
leaving tomorrow to go to the West Coast, so I'm gonna go say
Oh yeah,
bye to him real
take
quick.
your
I'll be
time.
right back. I'll be
Take your
right
time. I'm gonna get some more water. Going to get more agua. Okay. Does that go? Okay, here we go. All right, we're back. Okay, we got more water. More water. Yeah, it's sweet. There's 3 people hanging out. Appreciate you guys just chilling out with us tonight. It's been a nice Saturday. It's 10:01. Whoa, look at that number. Cool. So we have Tin Head. You've been here for a while. Hopefully you've been enjoying the conversations we're having. Um, I see old people in the chats. I don't know if they're still around. I can't see anyone else that's still in the chats or not.
back. All right.
All
What's
right.
good?
Hey, I got some more water, so we're all set.
All right. One of the things that reminded me of, and I like philosophy a lot, right?
Yeah.
And I have my girlfriend, right? My girlfriend can be a little bit not pessimistic, but she has that more realistic worldview where I'm on the other end, maybe a little bit more optimistic, right?
Right.
And she often talks about how me being an optimist is kind of like, on the one hand it is good, but it's not the way that the world is, right? And so we come sometimes go with these little back and forth, nothing malicious or whatever, just we just like talking about these types of things.
Yeah.
And it reminds me always of a quote that I saw in a movie called Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh, I
I
love
don't
that
know if you
movie.
watch.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah,
I cried.
yeah. And in the quote, I don't know if you remember, I forgot the dad, right? When
Okay.
he's in the alternate universe with the mom and they're out in that alleyway, the rain is pouring and everything like that.
Oh
And they're
yeah.
talking about their lives and how he is talking about how like when the wife is kind of like in this moment of not believing there's any hope in the world, and she's in the other universe like getting her beat up by her daughter and whatever.
Hmm.
And he's like, optimism is also a choice too, in the same way that you chose to be a realist and you chose to be like, or a pessimist and not enjoy life, I choose to be an optimist. Like,
Hmm.
it's not as though I'm doing it because I'm naive, like, most people assume. It's because it's the way that I get through the world and make sure that even though the world is such a bad place, it's how I'm able to put my foot forward and move on to the next thing.
Right. Right. It's like a mindset, a way of looking at the world, a way of behaving in such a way to like progress as an individual. I think I share a lot of that with you in a sense. I feel like if I was a pessimist, I'd be more depressed. But like we also need people to think differently and be pessimistic too, because it presents different ideas in a sense. Like that's why I welcome all sorts of ideas to just come forth. But like you can still be a pessimist and an optimist and still agree. Like like because you're in a relationship, right? But like I
Yeah.
think it's important to just like be vulnerable and share these ideas with people so we can understand where to go in the future and maybe people will become more optimistic maybe potentially.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's sad because I find the world often moving towards whatever. Like when we first joined the debate, and we first joined the live. My fault.
You're good.
And you talked about how people want to debate, right, all the time, or you find these TikTok lives where people are arguing. I also find the same thing in a lot of the communities and writing communities, especially more specifically, maybe the anime community, right? Where there's often debates. Debates is one of those things that are very essential to the community.
Mm-hmm.
It's often about like, whether a character is better written, what this thing means in this story, which character is stronger here versus there.
Mm-hmm.
And it can become a very toxic environment.
Right.
And I remember I joined like my first like live type of debate thingy. But instead of like arguing with the guy, I was trying to understand his perspective. He had made the claim about power scaling in stories.
Okay.
Like basically like, how strong a character is. And he was basically saying that power scaling and storytelling is the same thing, which is where I had a contention with him, right?
Okay.
And from there, I had listened to him talking to somebody beforehand, and they had been going back and forth, like just arguing. It became like a battle of ego versus ego until one person was like, "Dang." But when I joined, I was trying to have like a conversation of like, like, why do you think this way?
Yeah.
And it divulged into to an actual like productive conversation where
Yes.
he didn't want to concede at the end of the day, but it was much more like thing. By the end of it, he was like, "Oh yeah, W. Like I hope to like see you again and whatever maybe." And I feel like that's just so much more productive.
It's refreshing. It's you're leading with curiosity. That's what we ought to do, right? Like leaning with curiosity, being like asking the right questions and people want to just talk about their own stuff sometimes too, but like sharing ideas and letting them share their ideas I think is important instead of trying to be right. Like that's the problem we have nowadays. Like we just want to be right, which is understandable, but I think there's a lot of power in saying I don't know, but also leading with curiosity and trying to understand someone else's like ideas and perspectives.
Hmm. And it's very very like interesting to see because I noticed that the reason why I do that, right, is because maybe a part of my brain psychologically in my past with my parents or whatever it may be, despite me being around debate and I can be an argumentative person at times, when it comes down to it, when it boils down to it, I always want to be able, or I always find myself speaking to a person with the sense of like, that curiosity, right? I want to know why. And I noticed that a lot of people don't do that, and my brain sometimes gets confused because I'm like, we're here talking and it might not even be like a problem or anything like that, we're just here speaking,
Right.
but the brain is so quick to like defend something or to argue against something or to go against something. And I noticed that and I started to think like, well, if this can happen in a regular conversation, right, just human and human, then how can it happen on a grander scale? If we can't even understand one another from like a personal 1v1 or one-on-one's perspective, like how does it go grand wise? Like,
It starts
government or
it starts small. It starts small. Like
mm,
me and you right now, we're aligned. Like I believe our values are similar. Like I think we have
mm,
similar ideas about what we'd like to see in the future, like harmony or whatever it might be, right? Like there is this future out there that could be. And we're both striving with that right now in our own different ways, but we're both vulnerable with our voices and sharing what's on our minds. And it starts out small, right? It's me and you. But I'm
mm,
optimistic about like all these conversations I'm having with people like this that are productive, like it gives me the energy to even to carry that out to the next person, and people in my real life, um, to the point it's like I'm hoping I can build a community and then start a movement in a sense
mm,
with like a story we can tell ourselves. And I don't know what that story means. It's we write this as a collective, right? We understand this as a collective, and we go forth from there, right? And once
mm,
the movement goes on, who knows where that's going to happen. And I don't know if that's going to happen in my lifetime, but we ought to try something, right? And we ought to try to understand each other, and that's what we're doing. But like with people who are more, maybe argumentative and closed-minded, we can model these healthy dialogues like this to like show what it's like. Or even if I get a person like that on live, to lead like with what you did with that guy that was on the debate, like leaning in with curiosity, understanding, and being open-minded. I think if we have those three things grounded in our foundation, we can thrive as people.
yeah, for sure. And I also think that, see, I was again speaking with my girlfriend one day, and we were talking about what we would change about the requirements to be like a president or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it started going into a conversation where, like, the conclusion essentially was that it seems as though we learn so many things when it comes to school and whatever it may be, right? But a lot of the most important, essential things about life, whether it talking to people, relationships, and other things, are kind of not taught in schools, to the point where, like, you're kind of just forced to figure that out in life. Where
Right.
it's kind of sad because I feel like, in my opinion, it's probably one of the most important, if not the most important thing to learn in going out into life. And I feel like it's something that maybe, if not necessarily required, should be like established as like a norm, to learn to speak to somebody, to learn to like understand, to learn to like maybe even like just lower levels of psychology to get how people work.
Right. Yeah, I get that. And I think it comes down to like destigmatizing mental health and making that more prominent, because like
Hmm.
everything, everyone's been hurt by someone in the past, and it starts in the family, and how your like biology is part of who you are, right? So, but like also the environment and how you grow up determines like how you're going to behave as an adult. And I think also introspectively looking in is important, but yeah, also having like practicing like being curious and like talking to other people that understand them and their past too, right? I think for me that's helped with people in like relationships I have with people to be more compassionate and empathetic, right? But how do we teach that to people? And that becomes like the problem, because if someone doesn't want to learn that, they're not going to apply that to themselves. It has to be shown, I believe.
No, yeah, for sure. And it's kind of hard because, from my background, again, my parents are from Africa, right? They're from
Oh
West
yeah.
Africa.
Okay.
I'm like a first generation immigrant.
Dude, nice.
And
Okay.
there's a big clash between the ideals and the idea of what my parents interpret about like life in the world and me, right? And it's kind of hard because it's one of those things where like there are times where I can just genuinely be shocked on the lack of wanting to understand. It's almost as if we're not even speaking on the same like plane of like the world or existence even,
Yeah,
because while I might have my views and explain things in a way that I interpret life to be, they have almost the complete opposite, and it kind of is hard to find that middle ground, you know? And although it's like something that can be tried to do, it's just one of those things again where again I believe with people, people don't want to do things that they don't want to do. You know, it's just that
yes,
simple. And the same thing with understanding, same thing with like empathy and whatever may be. People don't do things that they simply just don't want to do. And if they did, they would, you know?
right.
So mhm.
Yeah, no, I was agreeing with you. Yeah, yeah.
And it could be kind of sad because again, I take that from the small scale and then you go to the big scale and you can kind of see the problems in like the world and society and how they really start to form. Because if this is happening between like me and my parents, you know, my own like my parents, then imagine like someone in a random person, like, you know, someone here and there. And that's why I really like was curious with your thing here because it seems like you're trying to, you know, get people together, you know, and
Mm.
sit down and genuinely just like, you know, talk, which I think is just really cool. I think that a lot of people they 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 don't understand how I guess important it is to kind of do this sort of thing.
Yeah, it's also, having deep dialogues like this, like discussions and philosophical ideas, I think is fantastic. But also, I've had people come on that just need to vent and talk about their lives, and if I can hold space for them, that's fantastic. And I tell them I'm not a therapist, but I'm more than happy to like listen, because I think people just need to talk to people sometimes and get what's off on their mind. And I think holding like a community like this where we can be there for each other, and then collectively start a story, or we can like start a trend perhaps, or whatever it might be, to
Yeah,
to to where like the people who don't get it might be like, oh, they're doing something there, and why are they doing something, and then might make them think a little bit more differently, right? I don't know how
yeah,
that all works, but what we're doing right now is a start of something, and it's important. Like every single word that we're both saying is important. And even though I'm not like
mhm,
hyper fixating on what I'm saying, I'm just letting my mind just freaking ramble and go. And I think that's a beautiful thing, And I think the more people are like conscious and aware of themselves and who they are as individuals and how they fit into the world with other people, I believe we can build upon that, right? But I think having conversations like this is important, and modeling this out for people to continue on their own, right? And how do they interact with people in the future, right?
yeah, for sure. Uh, it's important also because I remember I made a video on YouTube and I titled it "The Critical Moment." I was watching this movie called Nightcrawler. It
Oh, that sounds
stars
familiar.
Jake
Yeah,
Gyllenhaal,
yeah, 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 yeah.
and he's kind of he plays this I think socio psychopath kind of character in the movie. And I remember he it was like something that was going on, you know, he's like this news guy. I don't tell me if it sounds familiar. He goes and he tries to catch stories and then he sells them to news stations in order to get the money. And he
Okay.
kind of becomes fixated on this. And he stumbles upon this really gruesome sight, and while it's morbid in the movie, the thing that he tells his kind of like sidekick with him is that it that this is the critical moment, right? And although it's messed up in the story perspective because he kind of uses this to do really bad stuff, I thought about it in real life, and I'm thinking about how like like the critical moment in the sense of like how important it is to actually make that first step, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
A
Hmm.
lot of people don't start something because they believe it's not going to go nowhere,
Hmm.
right? Like it's not going to have that next step.
Hmm.
But even like some of the most greatest artists and creators and authors and writers and musicians and everything, like all of them I noticed envisioned where they were going to be in the same way that you're envisioning what you're going to be right now when it comes to how you want your community to be built, right? Like nothing happens when you don't do anything. And so it's like the crazy thing is that despite it seeming like such a simple concept, you just got to do it and it will happen. So many people don't, you know, like this idea of you sitting down and like actually sitting down and talking, like I like, of course, not to say you're not original, but of course people have tried to do it in the past, but the difference is that, like, again, it's about the consistency. I've seen you like on this is now like maybe 3 days in a row I'm seeing you.
Oh
So
well,
it's like,
dude, I'm happy you've been sticking around. I appreciate that. But
yeah, I've been looking. So it's like I've been seeing you do it 3 days in a row, and I'm like, okay, like it's not only just you're sitting down and you're doing it, like you actually want to create something. And I really just like that. You know, it really stuck to me
I
because
appreciate
it's
it, man.
such a humble, like, and also really really important thing. And I wanted to ask you, like, out of all the people you've talked about or talked with so far, what are some things that like you've learned from them? Like what are some things that you gain, whether it be like the venting, whether it be perspective, whether it be insights that they have, like what things stuck to you?
Hmm, that's a good question. That's a very good question. I've
Mm-hmm.
been more frequent going on live for the past 2 weeks because I've actually been getting people compared to like the couple months before. Like it just hardly no one would show up. I think it's just interesting hearing people's stories and who they are as people, and uh, like I met a woman that does like she does technology or like implements technology for people in like for students in school, and does like ethical stuff with it. So like how to implement new technologies into this in the system, and what she spoke upon was like they're like for middle schoolers there's like this virtual reality job simulator where they're able to pick between like 50 different jobs or whatever like careers and like simulate it and help people understand like help kids understand what they might want to do in the future, which I think is fantastic because like there's a lot of pressure on young people, like young students and teenagers, and to like figure out what they're going to do in life. And even people in college, like the first couple of years, they might not know exactly what they're doing just getting their gen ed. But like I think having like implementing new technologies like that is super critical, right? And we talked about super intelligence and how that like in AI and how that can be concerning. I met a person that does 4-H and loves pigs, and I found out that the pigs rolling in poop isn't a dumb thing because they're nasty. It's because they're trying to cool off, right? I
Mm,
met,
yeah.
talking with you and other people about philosophical ideas is fantastic just to get deeper and understand what we're doing together on Earth. Um, I I I I met like a Hollywood writer that wrote scripts um and is making a novel right now. He didn't disclose who he was, but he shared a lot of similar ideas with us too, right? And we're very similar, and a lot of people have been very good, like kind, of course, but like really interesting to talk to, and I've learned so much from different people. And just different perspectives. Like I remember when I was in Mania, I had a different account and I went live with people, which was kind of chaotic, but also entertaining, and also I learned a lot from people. And someone was a polytheist Hellenistic, which is like the Greek gods. She showed
Mm-hmm.
me, she showed me her shrines that she prays to, and like different things that are on the shrines that are significant. And I met a man that is what's the name? But he like a different kind of theology, like or religion, and he was explaining that about. I think it was still with polytheist Hellenistic. It's a special word for them that because he like practices preaching it. I forgot what the word is for it. But like so many different people from so many different walks of life coming here and just like talking. I think I feel grateful in a sense that people are actually just like going on and talking to me because like I told you, I don't know if I told you this, but maybe the guy before, like a year ago from now, like I wouldn't even imagine going on TikTok live. My social anxiety was terrible. My like how I talked to myself wasn't good. Like I thought it was boring, and like I've come so far from that from last year from two women in my life, and I can get into that later, but it's been really interesting just learning about people and sharing different like similar ideas or maybe even different ideas and coming together just to talk, and it's been fantastic.
Mm-hmm. I have a question for you. It's a typical, kind of philosophy type of question, but what do you think love is, or what do you think it means to you?
So I've never been in a relationship, to believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
28 years old, still single, but I'm working on it.
Hmm.
Uh, but
W.
well, I really wanted to work on myself because I was trying to figure out myself so I don't hurt people, right? And uh, just figuring out like how I can navigate my own brain, which has been, I think I'm in a good place now to be in a relationship. But I'm still in a transitional period, so I'm not rushing anytime soon. But I did get into an emotional affair with a woman last year. Not to
Mm-hmm.
get into it too much, but we didn't mean for it to happen, but like we connected
Hmm.
so deeply, and like we just got each other instantly. And I had to keep calling it out, and I'm still trying to do that, and it's just difficult, but it's complicated. But I've also I think that's the first time I ever fell in love with someone. Um,
How did it
and
feel?
what do I feel about the word love? Like it wasn't reciprocal. Like she couldn't give to me like I didn't want to like ruin her marriage, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it was limited, and I'm still trying to figure out what love means, right? Because I'm deeply curious, like how intimate I can get with another woman, right? Like not just sexually. Like I don't really care about the sexual part of things as much as like
Mm-hmm.
really just seeing them for who they are as people, right? And and just to like be comfortable in silence and support each other and grow and just be better people, right? Like for each other and what like just there's like the ideal partner, right? And
Yeah.
that's what I'm kind of describing to you in a sense. But I'm just deeply curious about finding that person and seeing how far it can get, right? Because like
Yeah.
at times like I've had this with my sister in a sense, like for sisterly love, like not like obviously, but like we got each other so much as kids because we've been through so much together. We're like we can just like give each other looks and like we just instantly get each other. Or if we get into arguments, like we can like I can admit I'm wrong and we'll just laugh about it and continue. Like it just like it was just easy. It just felt easy. It felt um um like I was like being comfortable with someone, right? And just to be vulnerable enough to share everything that's on your mind. I I I, I really want to find that, and I'm not in any rush, but love is complicated, but it's such a beautiful thing too, you know. But what I'm curious, like
Yeah.
how you'd answer that question too.
Um. So I kind of relate to you. Did you say that your the person that you got into an emotional relationship, she was married, right?
Yes.
Is that what you said?
Yep.
So it's funny. My girlfriend actually be when we met, had been in a relationship herself too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things I don't think I really admitted this out loud really ever. She's more comfortable with speaking about it, surprisingly enough. But it's just one of those situations where like what had happened was it was in high school, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really know her that well, but I had been with my ex in high school. It was like my senior year.
Mm-hmm.
And she had kept trying to introduce me to my current girlfriend now, right? Because she found that we were very similar in both like speaking and whatever maybe and blah 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 blah. And at first it was just like talking and we were friends and whatever. The first day that we spoke, we talked for hours upon hours about Breaking Bad of all things,
Nice, nice.
and how goated Breaking Bad was. And from there, but she was in a relationship, she had been in one for a minute, and like I had broken up with my ex, and like it was a whole thing. I had gone to Africa for a few months. I went on a whole little like kind of mental resurgence, like mental like cleansing, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But when I had gone back, we had like we started to develop in a more of a like an emotional bond together. It was always kind of there, right?
Yeah.
We were always very connected. Like we felt like we knew one another
Mm-hmm.
to a level that was very like surprising. Like it was just very like, whoa, like you get me and I get you. Like I don't even have to question what you're thinking. Like I just can kind of sense it. you know?
Right.
But at the same time, she had been in a relationship, but it kept kind of pushing forward and not as an excuse in any way, but it didn't seem like, or she hadn't been in the best place with her current partner at that time,
Mm-hmm.
just due to the great differences between them. And
Mm-hmm.
it kind of led into like that fizzling out. But me and her also fizzled out
Okay.
because she had left, gone on her own little like journey and whatever it may be. And I had already left time prior because like, I didn't want to bother whatever she was into at the time, right? I didn't want to be like a home wrecker or whatever. But
Yeah.
also at the same time, I didn't want to I one of those things is I didn't want to force something, you know?
Right.
Like even though I cared a lot, it was very much one of those times in my life where I noticed that this like usually when I care about something, I'm very focused on that thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
it almost is like it's almost like I won't stop until like my brain can be satisfied. But I found my brain at ease a little bit in the sense of like despite it being a situation that was very like upsetting, I found myself letting it be as it was until it came up again.
Right.
And it just so happened that it did. And from there, we started talking, and we've been together for like 2 years now,
Oh, nice,
ever
man.
since.
Awesome.
And one of those things that I've learned, and it's probably been maybe the most important, if not influential, thing I've ever experienced. Right? Just because like people like to say love is complicated, and you said that love is complicated because it is.
Mm-hmm.
Love is very complicated. It's a very like soul searching, in depth, like crazy type of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I feel as though love is also simple.
Mm.
And the fact that it's both at the same time maybe means that it is complicated. But I find that in our relationship, it's just so easy, you know,
That's awesome,
like
man.
to do things. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And we talk about it a lot because, at least we're under the belief that we're kind of like soulmates. I wanted to ask if you
I was
believed
gonna
in
ask you
soulmates
that.
as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't. Well, I look. There's this woman I met last year too.
Hmm.
That I don't know if it's like seduction method. It was I went to a strip club to practice being social because holy shit, I just couldn't do it. So like the girls come up and talk to
Yeah.
me, right? So
Uh-huh.
there's this girl that came up to me and started talking. Like it was very easy to talk with her at first, and I admitted to her that like I just came here to practice being social, and she's like, I didn't even notice like you were doing anything bad, which is interesting because I tend to be more hard on myself, and I think it's good to hear that from people, right? And she affirmed me, and
Hmm.
we got to know each other pretty well, and I don't know if it was like a form of seduction, but she's like telling me about like how our souls might have been like signing like a contract at the beginning of time where we meet in every life, and it just like it is like we continue growing from there, right? And so I don't
Hmm.
know, I don't know how to think about it. It'd be interesting if like me and you were destined to meet today, and but have we met in the past before, and like where are we getting at with like where what does that mean, right? I don't know what
Yeah.
that means, and I'm open to the idea because
Hmm.
I'm agnostic, but I lean spiritually, and it's an
Hmm.
interesting idea because I think it's almost like every moment is important in a sense, and I've kind of gone into like the free will is it an illusion topic. Like, am I just experiencing myself again? Is does that make any sense?
Hmm.
And kind of thinking about
Yeah.
this, in such a way. That's my first time being talking about this openly, but it's really interesting,
Hmm.
and out loud, right? It's like there's kind of a ease or like a peace with me just observing what this is, right? And do I what am I doing with my hands? Why am I looking at my hands? And what does that mean? And I think I think it kind of helps me just be Brady, just to be, and I'm like in good hands essentially, even though that might not be accurate or factual. It kind of helps me psychologically think differently, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, for sure. I think that life, like a story, it can be about perspectives, you know? I personally, I'm Muslim, actually,
Oh, okay.
surprisingly enough. I
Yeah.
don't know how many, yeah. But see, because of the way my brain works, I do often question a lot of things. um I don't question my religion that much, my faith. I'm curious about what other people think and whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
But faith for me has always been something that, like, it is just like the word is, like it's something about belief
Mm-hmm.
and something about yourself. But as for the free will and like or determinism type of argument, etc., I think it's just one of those things where it's a I guess the question is, does it matter, you know, in the
Right.
sense of like your life could have been predestined, right? Your life could have been, like, trans like already written and whatever it may be, for sure. And of course, thinking about that can be a very like scary feeling. But my question for it sometimes is like, does it matter? Because do we feel it, you know?
Right.
In the
And
same way, in yeah, sorry, you could
no, no,
continue.
no. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm just agreeing with you.
Yeah, I was saying, because so many people are stuck up on, like, maybe if everything was determined, like, everything was already set in stone, how can like we really live life? And some people, like, this is a very like popular argument against the idea of God, because how can God be all knowing and whatever, be a God that can see everything, but also at the same time free will exists, that's
Right. You get it. You get it.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, it's a crazy, like, sometimes a contradiction. And we can go with the different developments on what different people say about it. But uh for me personally, I would say that it's just one of those things where I think that a lot of people, when me personally, I would say that when it comes to God, right? God is a type of being where in nature is like really comprehensible, in the sense of like people talk about being able to know God, but at the same time, can we comprehend God, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Who's to say that it's not possible that God can truly create a world which he knows the future, but at the same time, we have the choice of the future, It's something that could
Interesting.
be in the realms, because like, in the same way that he's, supposedly all good, all loving, he's also all powerful, so why not? Why could he not create it? But I'm gonna go the route this time, like, just for the sake of like talking and, being able to relate. But sometimes I wonder if it really does matter, because in your life and my life, and I think in the most people's lives, aside from these specific moments in time, we often do believe that we have the free choice to do anything.
Hmm.
And we do understand that actions have consequences.
Hmm.
I think that there are a lot of times in life where we might sit down and say that things are unfair, and this is true. There's a lot of things that are unfair in life as a whole that may be beyond our control.
Hmm.
But at the same time, there are probably, in my opinion, so much more things that we can do in our direct action that we can, like, actually, like, take control of, to the point where claiming that everything is already determined is kind of like, why does that matter? Like, if I get up and decide to go get some water right now, my brain could be thinking like, oh, is this a choice that I'm really making right now? Like, I don't know. But at the end of the day, I'm thirsty, right? I'm gonna go
Right.
get up and get some water,
But
and it's
why are you
my choice to do
thirsty?
it.
Why are you thirsty though?
I don't know. I could be thirsty because of my biology. Who
Right.
knows?
Right.
It could be
Right.
predestined that I'm thirsty, right? Like, it could be all these different reasonings. But
Right.
again, but going back to perspective, it's like, in this moment, right now, when you looked at your hands, right, and you were doing it, I feel like in that moment, from when I was looking at you, that you're in the perspective of really deepening your existence and why you are doing what you're doing, right? You are like contemplating, like, who you are and what your actions are, what everything means, and whatever it may be. And I think that from that perspective and in that moment, in like where you were looking at your hands right then and there, it would be hard to go back and be like, oh, me looking at my hands right now is not really my choice, right? because in that moment when you're doing it, I feel like it goes even just beyond something where there is like beyond your
You cut out there. I think you said beyond your control. Hello? Oh no. No! You're out of the app. I see the coffee mug. Hello?
Okay.
Oh, you're back.
Hello?
Yeah, yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Sorry about that. My
No, no.
girlfriend is calling me.
Oh no, you're okay. If you need to
Give
take
me
the
one
call,
second.
yeah.
No, I'm gonna let her know that I'm on the thingy real quick.
Okay, yeah.
Oh.
All right. We got 7 people watching. Holy moly. I've hit a point where everything seems to fold into the idea that there is no inherent meaning. I can't just think my way past it. I still have to live inside that realization instead of resolving it. I think it's different for every person, right? I've hit that point where everything seems to fold into the idea that there's no inherent meaning. I think we are meaning making machines, so we can apply meaning to literally anything. Um, but if you don't see that right now, that doesn't mean anything bad. Um, but like as I think we continue to progress in our lives, um, we can make, like I said, we can make meaning out of anything. But it's not bad that you're viewing that way. I'd be curious to talk with you more if you wanted to.
Hello.
Hello.
All right. So as I was saying, I feel like taking that moment and amounting it to, or and not even amounting it to, because I understand that it's such a deep thing. Like it's really deep in your existence in the sense of like, is this a choice that I'm making right now, or is this a choice that I'm making because someone or something is set in stone? But in the moment when you're looking at your hands and you're really contemplating that existence, I think that it might not matter if it was determined,
Right.
because when you are looking at your hands at that moment, that feeling, that thing cannot be taken out of context. I don't know how I can word this, but I hopefully understand what you
I
hopefully you
think
get it.
I think I'm trying to. I think I'm kind of getting it. In a sense,
Mhm.
it's like I'm totally fine if it's determined. If I'm just like the puppet and then like the gods are just playing with us. Like I'm
Mhm.
okay with being the observer in every single moment. Like in the present, I'm the observer, which is collapsing into the past, with the future is just coming forth, right? And I'm just, and what I mean by that is just like being aware, like just being aware, and like meditation is good for this. I need to practice this more, but it's like I'm subconsciously doing things that I don't like. I'm not like my mind is just an extension of my body is just an extension of my mind. But like, why am I doing this with my hands right now, right? And I'm conscious doing this, but like what I was doing before I wasn't. And it's just like, what am I in control of? And I think the more we are conscious and aware of our actions and our thoughts and our behaviors, I think we can like steer the ship in the right way. Like essentially, it's like becoming more activated. And if you were around when I talked about my uncle, giving like talking about numbers when I was in mania, like we're all zeros and ones. Imagine like you just become more and more activated in a sense. And the more
Mhm.
activated and aware you are of who you are as a person, the better you can be. And maybe the gods are just having fun witnessing this, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, yeah, like the way that you're like the way that your mental is able to acknowledge that even if gods are controlling me right now, right? I am okay, right? Even though I think that some people, the problem lies in like when they do think about that, they start to take meaning out of their own life, like
It can become
like
dangerous.
yeah, it can become dangerous, because if you truly think that nothing is your choice and nothing really matters, it could be one of those situations where you become a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way,
Yes,
you know.
yes, definitely. And that's where mania went bad for me. Not saying I
Hmm.
was like, not saying I was God, but I definitely believed that I was teaching people a lesson in a sense, and I took it too far with some people. So yeah, it can become grandiose, and it but like
Hmm.
I think we can tell ourselves delusions, knowing it's a delusion, to get to a destination. If it makes any sense.
Yeah, for sure. And it's
I
like,
We have to stay grounded and with being curious, understanding, and open minded. And I think if we have those in our values, we can abstract any idea to just like help out with how we psychologically navigate ourselves in the world, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that as much as if let's say in the case that the universe is already decided, I don't feel like it takes away from the experiences and the things that you have had in your life already, right?
Right, right,
Like even if this stuff is like the way that it is, it doesn't somehow diminish, take away, or just push down those things as meaningless things.
right,
You are still you and you still matter, and your feelings and experiences still matter. So it's like
right.
that's what I think I was getting at in the sense of like, does it really make a difference on whether or not you were built? Because
Well,
at the end of the day, you are still the thing.
well, I will say this. I think the more people that are aware of like maybe the illusion argument with free will,
Mm.
I think it creates more of an empathetic view on humans in general. Whether there's kind of a radical stance on some levels, but if someone was born into poverty, like they might be more likely to steal. And I think if we helped these communities out, gave them the right resources where they didn't have to make this choice in the first place, or didn't have the desire to steal in the first place, like we can just become so much better as people. And I just, like I said, I think it offers more of an empathetic take on just the existence of the universe, and whatever is within that.
Yeah, and I wanted to say empathy is maybe top one most underrated feelings and emotions of all time.
Yeah.
I think that if you genuinely took every human and you gave them empathy to an extent where they truly cared enough to contemplate about things and people in life, the world would be maybe like and almost instantaneously a better place.
Oh yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
it wouldn't even be funny. It would just like if you just gave everyone that overnight, the next day you would find like a infinitely better world. Just because like again, a lot of people don't want to understand things. Like just like for example, right? Like when it comes to like you mentioned poverty, right? There's a lot of people that like to make like racist remarks and other things like, oh, like black people commit so much crime,
Mm.
you know they do all this, or they're bad in this way, but they refuse to acknowledge the history behind
Yes.
it, or the
Yes.
situation behind it,
Yes.
or even anything about it. Like they just
Yes.
want to, it's like perpetuating the narrative.
It's ignorance, man. It's ignorance.
Mm.
And I would start like ignorance breeds fear, right? But I would say I would say fear is the root cause of all unnecessary suffering. And if the individual can eradicate fear from the mind, they can lead more productive and fulfilling lives. And like this doesn't mean we can't like feel fear. Like that's a good thing. We just shouldn't let it dictate how we think about things. And that's where like ignorance
Yeah,
comes into play too. When it comes to like, oh yeah, the black people are just all criminals, or all immigrants are criminals, or whatever it might be, right? I think it's just a stupid take, right? And people aren't trying to understand like the people's stories, why they're there in the first place, or like how they were brought up, and that's why I circle back to like mental health, and how we treat ourselves and understand ourselves in the world is important. But like the problem is, and I think I proposed this with you before, is like how do we get people to even think about this critically themselves?
it would be a difficult thing. I would probably say stories. It's one
Yes,
of
you
those
know
things
it.
where
You know it. You
I,
know it.
I think that if you sit like, one of the biggest ways to get people together is to explain something in a story format.
Right. Right.
And it could be fantastical, it can be like regular, but people really tend to understand when it might not be them but a character that they can like see. Like for example, there's a popular anime called Jujutsu Kaisen,
Okay.
right? And it did like a sequel series where they brought in like aliens to come to the planet, right?
Okay.
And these aliens have a different way of life as humans, but for the most part they're like humanoid kind of creatures, and the story is about them wanting to come to Japan and like just find their own community there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But of course the humans have a problem with them coming there and doing it because you messed up their whole feng shui. They don't like it. But despite it being like sci-fi, this is a story about aliens and humans. It's very much symbolism and allegorical for like what happens when like a group of people come in,
Right.
like refugees. How do you take those people in? How do you assimilate the culture and the people? How are the people who are living in this place already interpret them? How do these new people interpret them? How
Mm-hmm.
to bridge that boundary? And you could see how in depth it can go just from a simple story, just
Mm-hmm.
from aliens coming to planet Earth, which seems so simple, but on a deeper level, you can introduce all these themes that can seem very political, like One Piece, for example.
Mm-hmm.
One Piece is about a guy wanting to become the pirate king, but you get so many different types of philosophies and ideas and all these other things like political, like control and government and friendship and like suffering and all this other topics all packed into one story. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that people are naturally like, the more you showcase that to people, the more you can get people to understand, is the way that you kind of make people more sympathetic.
Yes, dude. It's just literally like making these ideas relevant to the populace or like the vast or the majority amount of people. Like, how do we get these ideas out there so people can digest it and reflect? And I think you're on the right track with storytelling, because it's super critical for us to be like flourish and survive as humans. Ever since we've written stories, it's been on the cave walls of like throwing like sticks or spears at an animal or whatever it might be. I don't know.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm gonna probably get off here soon. But I have one last question for you. What
yeah, for sure.
is your dream with writing? Like, what do you want to do?
Okay. Um, so it's one of those things where I really, really, really want to connect with everyone that I tell a story to.
Yes.
My goal, I guess, let's say like as an accomplishment wise, I want to be able to create all forms of type of like media in any way. Like I want to be able to one day make a movie. I want to one day be able to have a TV show, a
Mm-hmm.
book, a comic book of every single type and form, to showcase like kind of like the avatar state of all these different things and how they're important types of medium,
Mm-hmm.
and really to get people to have more empathy. I want to explore a lot of the themes about the human existence and being able to converge that into like a lot of these stories and helping people just understand other people. Like my
Mm-hmm.
debut novel is called The Eschaton Chronicles. It follows it's kind of like it's a world in which every pantheon from every mythology exists, right?
Okay. Yeah.
All simultaneously in this world. And
Okay.
these humans that are called hosts kind of are like these like hosts of these gods who go around and do what like their stuff in these different areas. But one of the biggest things of the story that I want to explore are the different cultures.
Mm-hmm.
Each of these pantheons and their hosts have their ideas of living and their way of life, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like a major theme throughout the story to see how all these affect people and even across generations. How does this generation view this even within the same type of culture? And it kind of like that in the sense of like, I want to be able to make it so that someone can see somebody like another human being and remove their personal biases and view them as another human.
Yes, dude. You got it. You got it. You understand. You know what this is about. You know the mission. Are you my agent? Are you an agent, by the way? I don't know.
Maybe,
That's another thing
maybe.
I'm trying to make this idea of telling a narrative story like real time in a sense. So
Mhm.
there's gods, there's agents, and then there's actors, either good or bad actors. And I think I'm a good actor, but I'm trying to find agents out there. And I think you're an agent because you get it. And you have a really deep understanding of the human condition, I believe. And with how you've understood life with yourself and with other people, and you love to write, you know why you're doing that. You know your why, and that's like the most important part about like what you do as a person, right? So you got it in you, dude, and I wish you the utmost best, and you're gonna do something, and I see it in
Thank
you.
you.
So I wish
Yeah,
you the best with it, man. It's awesome
I
hearing your
appreciate
stories.
talking with you. I wanted to say that I definitely do want to connect with you more. I
Yes,
have my TikTok here. I have a YouTube. Maybe we can make videos together and stuff like that. So
hell
you can
yeah.
connect with me however you want. And
Okay.
yeah, I think I'm already followed to you.
Yeah, I followed you
So
back on TikTok Studio. I don't think it always follows back. Yeah, it's like a glitch in TikTok Studio. So I'll go on my phone after this.
yeah,
I'll make sure to follow you back.
no
But
problem.
you're
I
always
hope
welcome.
you have a good, you know, a day, night, wherever you're at, whatever time it is.
Appreciate
I
you
hope everything is good. And keep read more stories and love everyone.
for sure, man. You know it. You know it. You're more than happy to hop on another time if you see me live and just want to keep talking about different ideas. You've been fantastic to talk to, and I appreciate you, man. I love you like a brother. So you're great.
For sure. I'll keep watching, man. I'll be in the background or I'll be here. I don't know, but
Awesome.
I'll be there.
I appreciate you, man.
All right. I'll see you.
Take care.
Thank
Have a good
you.
night.
You too.
Cool. All right, people. That's been 3 hours and 16 minutes on live. I appreciate you guys hanging out. There's three of us still here. But I was going to get to philosophical if you're still here. You're not cooked, man. You're still young. You got plenty of time. Anyways, with that, peace out, people. Take care. Have a good night or day or whatever.